Hi, my name's Ellen Aston. It is nice to meet you. I'm 19 years old and I'm currently a student at the University of Birmingham where I'm studying paleontology and geology. There I also enjoy medieval battle reenactment. So now you know a bit about me, but what am I doing here? Well, I'm a scout, and here I'm completing part of my Scouts of the World Award, or my SOWA. But what is this award? It's an 80-hour project that we have to manage and lead by ourselves, and it has to revolve around either peace, sustainability, or the environment. It also has to fulfil several of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. But what is my project? My project is about the Isle of Skye, where I'm aiming to preserve and protect its important biodiversity for the future, and hopefully to educate the people around me about its brilliance too. Skye is really important to me. I learnt to walk here when I was 8 months old, and I've been visiting here with my family since as long as I can remember. I learned to collect fossils on these beaches, and it's inspired in me a great love for the outdoors, which led me to scouting. So I'm really honoured to be able to hopefully give back to this community that has given me so much. Hi everyone, this is the official start to my project. I've been emailing various people and nailing the specifics down, and now it's time to get started. And my first thing that I need to do is my research. This will be the scientific backing for my project and my survey. It'll give me guidance on what I need to do, and it'll help me decide specifically what I want to look into. And topic one for me is badgers. And that is the final finishing on my work on badgers. So next I'm going to be looking at otters. I'm not going to be doing any survey work on otters when I'm on Skye, but I'm hoping to take you guys to show you some spraint and halt sites, so I think it's important to put kind of my personal knowledge into the context of the scientific literature. And now the last thing I am looking at for now is migratory birds and how they interact with wind farms. So I'm really lucky to have a really well published ornithologist as one of my lecturers, so he's given me some great recommendations from where I can start. So it is now a few days before I head to Skye, and the last thing to do on my list right now is pack. So you might be wondering, what kind of things do you take out into the field when you're doing work like this, or also when you're just kind of hiking in general? So number one is shoes. You really need to have a shoe with good ankle support. So I wear these. I really like this style because of, this high ankle support. But also these are fabric, so you typically get hiking boots in fabric or leather. I prefer fabric because for me it feels lighter and more breathable, and also easier to clean. So leading on from footwear, you also really need to be careful with your sock choices. So waterproof socks are pretty common to wear out in the field, but I prefer to wear a kind of thin liner pair of socks, and then on top kind of your more typical like hiking style sock. These two layers keep my feet warm and dry, and they also prevent blisters. Kind of leading on with clothing, you also want to wear clothes that are lightweight and breathable. So a t-shirt of kind of this wicking like material. So you don't want to be wearing anything like cotton because that absorbs sweat and then that cools you down, which is something you really want to avoid. It's also a good idea to wear layers of fleeces. So layering is the most important thing because that's what traps the heat close to your body. And you can always take layers off, but you can't put layers on. And probably the most important thing for Scotland, where I'm going, is waterproofs. So you never want to go into the field without at least a waterproof jacket. Mine's all bundled up right now, but also waterproof trousers because you don't know what you're going to be wading through. And these all gaiters help stop you stepping in anything rather nasty. So additional kit that I always take out into the field, I always make sure I have a hat, some gloves and something to go around my neck. Some people wear scarves, I wear a buff. You can do more things with it. That's my preferred method. But I also always take a cap and sunglasses. I'm really not very good with bright light, so these help me see detail when I'm out in the field. And this is Scotland. The weather's changeable. Who knows what I'm going to be facing each day in the field, so it's better to be prepared. And then finally, the last thing I always take out with me is a whistle and a first aid kit, because hopefully nothing's going to go wrong, but you never know what's going to happen when you're out on the fells, out on the hills, so it is essential to make sure that you can fully take care of yourself while you are out there. So I'm a registered and licensed first aider, so you don't have to kind of do all that, but it is very important to at least have some basic knowledge of what to do if you're stranded and hurt and you need some help. Hi everyone, me again, and now I'm well on my way to Skye. As I'm currently studying in Birmingham, I had to get the train from there to Lancaster where the rest of my family lives. After that, me and my dad have driven the 4 hours up here to Dunbarton, just past Glasgow, where we're staying in the Premier Inn overnight. Tomorrow we'll be up bright and early to beat the traffic, and we'll be driving up past Loch Lomond, through Rannoch and Glencoe to Fort William, then up through the Highlands to Donan Castle and then to the Isle of Skye. That'll take us about 4 hours. After that, it's just a short drive across the Skye Bridge and then on to Isle of Skye where we'll be staying.
Vamos henne, was ma henne rare shana is a genie mare gala vi me gala slach it komme la min hare ra hing ha was sai shung halvai fatai nyala bin gado licking ha see you the bahoro bilim boha elim peroi koi elim boha see you the bahoro bilim boha na chier man je voor me ziek van nog eens hoor in dat zakje na keer dat kan het niet hostias ik lach ga je niet on je fine as nie stiffen je maar nie ha nie schinde ma see you the bahoro bilim boha elim peroi koi elim boha see you the bahoro bilim boha beyond the net for Johnny kachmara gesma nach linkschen ja den galen gefähr hoke sasi se viundra gene chaniga achik lach nach reis het de lave gaan nu hier geen milage spul je hosje haanje kristal in je masi hune bahoro limbo ha limbo noi koi limbo ha si hune bahoro limbo ha Minnische vertoor zoals ze wapen nu de gus ik heb een appen en een hul in een tjoen dag en maag ik kan zo tegen nul en ik ga niet secondi kan je de hol aan zien er aan je glas zie je de bahoro limbo ha limbo noi koi limbo ha zie je de bahoro limbo ha se rete gelad en ket some magic in raji na kaja lach se bode va het kitchen me shmarach bis am ge var in de baga le piazzi hune bahoro bilimbo ha elim peroi go elimbo ha si hune bahoro bilimbo ha ben dort sta heva ich in se getrahe ken hoge ve volari nach part na spia arte ken nan mus ke fujo gen harmi ben je hoke sasi kholaj di yasi hune bahoro bilimbo ha elim peroi go elimbo ha si hune bahoro bilimbo ha elim peroi go elimbo ha si hune bahoro bilimbo ha
Speed pony boat like a bird on wing onward the sailors cry carry the land's born to be king
So we're just about to go up to Kinloch to look at the old and disused badger sets up there. So we're at our first site in Kinloch and we reach our first holes on this bank here. These small ones. We've got a couple more scattered across here, down there, but the main entrance is this hole here, which I've just been working on. So it kind of seems to collapse to the left, but opens up and widens to the right, potentially under this hillock, and potentially linking to another entrance we've got here, which continues down quite far. So I'm just quickly going to explain what I take measurements wise at a potential site. So I always do a 6-figure grid reference using OS, and also I'm taking altitude above sea level. I'm taking the direction in which this hole is facing, so which the open faces. So in this case it's south out to sea. And then also take the dip and strike, so that is, using this as a demonstration, the dip is the angle at which the hole is progressing downwards, and then the strike is the perpendicular measurement to that in terms of degrees. And then also doing a quick soil description, and I'm taking soil samples back to do a bit of analysis, kind of general description of features around, and then also the dimensions of the hole. Yeah. So we're at a second set with one main entrance, a little one down here, and then two up where the others are standing. So I'm going to take my measurements for these now. As clarification for my notes, the main set there is going to be 2A, the higher one up there is going to be 2B, 2C, and this one here will be 2D. And we're an altitude of 67.6 metres. Amazing data. So the hole is facing 97 degrees. And then we need to look at dip and strike. A bit more nervous to stick my head down this hole, but here we go. This one's dipping a lot more sharply. 49.
Can't see a thing looking into the sun. So I'm just having a stab at that.
Okay, let's take my soil. It's going to be a pain trying to get the red clay out of this. Here we go. Now let's measure. Should have started first, actually. So this one's got a lot more of a platform than the other one. So main entrance. That one looks a lot deeper as well. This one's a lot bigger than the other one. This one's 60. Half a metre tall. This really goes down. I reckon I could stick my legs down there actually.
It is that type of entrance actually, yes.
It is a very,
Yeah.
it's very large entrance. Sprawl myself out. Again,
It should go down, on
one's
and down to the
curving.
right, but halfway down, come back to the left.
yeah, this one's I'm definitely seeing a curve round to the right.
Yes, and there will be one coming back to the left as well. I think we're pretty well sure we've got that. So it is linking to the other holes that are
Yeah,
satellites
the
around
left
it.
is hidden a little by a bit of a what looks like a large root or a hummock.
Oh yeah, highly likely, yes.
But
Yeah,
I'm very, very clearly seeing
yeah.
that
Very good.
swing round to the right.
Very good. Well done.
Again, half a metre deep.
Oh yes.
I can't feel the end
No,
of either side.
very good.
Very large entrance. I've got to sprawl myself out. Again,
It should go down.
This
on
one's
and down to the
curving.
right, but halfway down, come back to the left.
yeah, this one's I'm definitely seeing a curve round to the right.
Yes, and there will be one coming back to the left as well. I think we're pretty well sure we got that. So it is linking to the other holes that are
Yeah,
satellites
the
around
left
it.
is hidden a little by a bit of a what looks like a large root or a hummock.
Oh yeah, highly likely, yes.
But I'm very, very clearly seeing that swing round to the right.
Very good.
Yeah, so would you introduce yourself to the camera?
Okay, yes.
And
well,
if you can give us a bit of context about this Kinloch site.
No, very good. Well, thank you for that. It's a site dear to our hearts. We've been here on Skye for over 30 years, but visiting for the last 50. And because we have a historical interest in badgers, we naturally migrated to the bank here, and from various information that we gleaned from locals who were aware of what was on the hill at certain times, we did some survey work and eventually found some fairly large holes and some that had been dilapidated for many years. And gathering information from some of the locals as well, we discovered that as the Forestry Commission came in the late 60s, 1960s that is, locals were given Cymag, that's a cyanide powder, to put down all the holes on the whole of the bank, because they knew there were rabbits and they didn't want the rabbits eating the trees. So people did that unbeknownst to us at the time, and we've now pieced that story together and we've come onto the hill. Unfortunately no live badger sets, but we are finding evidence of them from the past. And today we've started to record some of the holes and going right into the depths of it literally, and getting soil samples and sizes and a few bits of video of all that action, which is really good. It is, you can see the sandy substrate
Following that.
And that links up all the way through
to our badger sets.
That's right, exactly. And beyond.
And beyond.
To other sets that are in the same line. So they are damn good geologists.
They are indeed. So I'm here at my second site of the day. This one is just around the corner from Toravaig. So we hiked out from the distillery way over there, round the headland. We've come down through the farms, down to that beach over there, and then all the way up to here to these banks. We've kind of got steep green banks that go into the heather below. So this is a quite different environment from the sets I was at earlier, which is why I'm quite interested to see what we've got here. We've also got a very, very clear spoil heap. So this is kind of all the stuff that the badger kicks out the hole when it's digging it. So it's going to be interesting to see if the stuff that's left inside is different to the stuff in the spoil heap. So I'm going to get going. So to show you the layout of this set, right here, I'll move so I'm not in the way. Here we have our spoil heap, and then here we have our hole. So if I crouch down to show you, this hole curves quite dramatically around this way to follow the edge of the hill. Doesn't seem to tunnel into the hill as much. Yeah. So in this section of bank we have what would have been the main set, but unfortunately here we see a lot of disturbance from humans. So we have entrances blocked off with stones so they can't bolt, and then the accompanying tunnels have been dug out. You can see it more clearly with this over here. It looks a bit like a dark hole on camera, but the edges just go straight down into the chambers, which you can see, and here as well. So there's quite a lot of holes in this section. Unfortunately, most of them have been damaged by this hunting. So for site 4, this is the hole I'm going to be looking at. It is the most complete. It is a bit set down the bank from the others. The others kind of go on this top ridge here, but we can still see that it is part of that main set with the way that it curves. So this is one I'll be taking my measurements from.
It won't have entirely gone to waste.
So we've got some remains of fox. We've got the skull, and what did you say was the scapula? Yeah. And Dad's just cut me over with a pelvis.
Yeah.
And a vertebrae, or a vertebra, sorry. So what we reckoned happened was after the badgers moved out, Mr. Fox took the opportunity to come in, and it was him who was blocked and then unfortunately dug out. So we're in the third location at Isle of Skye, and we're looking at a very, very heavily degraded set system here. So the Croft House was built in 1881, so these were probably taken care of then, and obviously the set has been left, so that's still 140 years, so quite impressive we have this much. So I think the clearest defined hole, got that little kind of depression, but our clearest hole is probably this one down here, and it seems fairly representative from what we can see on the surface, so I'm going to be taking my measurements from this one. Yeah, so we're at our 4th site. This is our first used site on the mainland. This is near Loch Alsh Dam in Glen Udalin. So this is a used set, so some things we're taking note of. We've got the cleared bracken at the top that they're using to clear for bedding. And then we can see actually on the heap itself some of the bedding that they've recently tossed out, and this really, really sandy substrate on the spoil heaps. So we're going to hopefully try and get a measurement of the tunnel. I'm not going to be sticking my hands inside this one because badger sets are protected.
Excellent.
So we'll see what measurements we can get. So we're just approaching this spoil heap here, just to take a bit of this. There we go.
Main entrance.
Yep.
The big spoil heap there. And then when you come up to it, you'll see what looks like another hole going in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that hole, I mean, it must have been about 40 years ago. Someone's dog went down
Oh gosh.
and they thought they'd try and dig it out. Well, when you see the, believe me, they would have been still digging. But that was the start of it.
Okay.
What I see now is they've got dry Malinia in it. Now, I'll bet you a pound to a penny they sit out in an evening, sitting on that, like a little, almost a day nest type thing.
Yeah. Right, let's go up.
If you want to get your kit ready for measuring and so on.
So these are the main holes in the spoil heap, coming off them here. Got a dung pit here, some other little dug bits. Right at the entrance here we can see the bedding inside as well. So I'm looking down the main hole right now. It's really interesting to see below we have this really sandy type soil, but above it's really, really compact, almost looks like rock. We can see this hole's been here for quite some time because we've got some starts of vegetation on the upper side of the whole face. Down here we've got a secondary hole up from the main set there where my dad is. It looks like we've got a couple more holes here as well. So this set is going to be very, very old and very, very well developed. I mean, we can tell that because running along here, it's a bit hard to pick up on camera, but to the naked eye you can see very, very well worn paths and tracks running around the set and around the surrounding hills, and these have been made by generation upon generation of badger living in this set. So Roger has that this set has been around here definitely since the 1980s was when he became aware of it, so it's likely to have been here for decades more by the size of this. Like all kind of this that we are seeing out from the hill is all stuff that they will have excavated, and there's more down here as well. So this is tons of sand that they have kicked out from underneath this hill to form their set. So we've just been digging around in a latrine, which is a dung deposit. So where they go to the bathroom, they kind of dig these dung pits and do everything there really. But we've found these small marble bones. So latrines so close to the main set and the excess of bedding tells us that there's probably cubs underground right now. They definitely know we're here. The wind's blowing in a way that they can smell, so we're just trying to be as unobtrusive as possible right now. Oh my god.
That's your guard hair.
Here we go.
So the white shaft, and then you've got the black, and then the little white tip on the end.
That's very cool, Dad. So you can see they've pulled out all the heather above their set, and instead that's allowing the bracken to come in, and that is just what they want for their sets, for their bedding. So they've actually changed the landscape and changed the vegetation to kind of allow for what they want and what they need, which is quite incredible, these guys. Here we go. This is one of the badger paths I was talking about just a minute ago. Going to take us round to our next set. So here's our next set, and it is right above the other one, so we suspect that it may actually be linked up, especially because there's a badger track leading right up here. So I'm going to get going and taking some more measurements. Yeah.
Identify that one, I'm afraid. Well,
So,
Highland badgers.
yeah. Here we've got a little pit that they've dug out to cool them off during hot weather, to access this kind of cooler soil below. And this one looks really well used, really well worn, but also used relatively recently. So that's really quite clever of them. But what I'm really looking at here is this really peaty looking soil below. at kind of the base of this little dig out. So peaty soils are really common up here, so, and they're quite moisture rich as well, so using that to cool off is probably a good idea. So over that hilltop there on the other side, there's a couple of burns in steep ravines, and there are badger sets in there as well. 2 of them, one in each ravine, that link directly to each other. So also wondering if they link to these sets here, because badger spatial distribution is based mainly on the size of the group and then also the availability of the food. In a highland environment such as this, their food is quite scarce, so their territories are a lot bigger as a result. That also means that kind of the way their sets are distributed is slightly different from kind of what we traditionally think of as a badger set further down south. So you'll have kind of one main set, the likes at which I just looked at now. Then spread throughout the territory, you'll also have 5 or 6 satellite sets, which the ones on the other side that hill are most likely to be. But what's really interesting is we see that they seem to rotate around the seasonal, the satellite sets seasonally. Sorry, getting my words the wrong way around. And that's probably to, you know, help kind of not put pressure on what is already a pretty scarce food source. And so they typically feed on earthworms, but as I showed you, we found vole bones or small mammal bones in the latrine, so that shows that they are sourcing alternate foods. They will also go for insects, tubers, roots, things like that. So that gives us a really good insight into what the badgers here are doing. Got another really clear badger path right down where my dad is as well. That's really cool. Definitely shows they're really going everywhere around here, and this is definitely a very well used set. This path is clear enough for you guys to see on camera, and it leads straight to set 8 from the main set on that hill there. Very nice. Really clear how it is parted the heather out the way and rubbed off. You can see it on that one there, rubbed off the bark. Here she is, here's number 8. That is...
So you don't want to step back and admire your work.
No, you don't. Your eyes will go straight off. Oh yeah, this is big hole, big hole.
I said one of the days, so where you've got the trees going up the gully, up the gully. There was a set on the left-hand side, a small one.
Yeah.
And then the large one was back on this side. It was on the right-hand side, and the big one was on the left-hand side, but further up.
Yeah.
So it was a suggestion one of the days.
So we are right now standing in the wood in Glenelg. We've just come down from the Glenelg Bross. We're in this woodland. We've got a set complex here, so we've got a couple holes like there and just behind me that are not currently in use, but then we've got a spread of 3, one there, a little one up there and one there, that are currently in use as well. So it seems even within one set they have holes that they seem to prefer to be using. This one right here is definitely being used. We've got fresh bedding in there. Very large. I mean, I'm currently standing on the spoil heap, but you can tell how big this spoil heap, because you look at it propped against that tree. Huge amounts of dirt coming out of this baby. Got another hole here. This seems to be less of an entrance and more of just a gap that they've used as an entrance, because it very immediately splits off to the left and right, going around the contour of the hill down here. Another one, also in use, absolutely scattered around this hill all over. So down here where I was earlier, all across here, and further, sorry Dad, over the brow of the hill and round the corner as well. Go round. If we go.
Here.
Yep, so we've got where the bedding is being dragged down, lots and lots of dung pits, and then our hole with all the fresh bedding in the mouth. So this is the hole I'm going to be taking my first measurements from. You sniffing poo, Dad?
Yeah. There's nothing like it, you know. And
So we can tell it's fresh.
It's Easter. I mean, Easter Sunday,
Yeah, so this is hole number 1. So like the last sets that we surveyed, we think there's going to be cubs underground here as well. We've got the signs of the fresh bedding, the dung right outside the hole when normally they try and keep their latrines quite far away. We've also got, you know, the fresh bedding and the presence of flies. So highly likely that, yeah, we've got little babies down there. They've probably been born in the first week of February, but Mum is still going to be busy looking after them. So just like I did at the last set, I'm going to leave them a little present of some apple. Badgers love this, and it's going to be my little thank you for letting me take my measurements around their nice little house. So for the location of these Glenelg sets, we've got our sets, our holes really covering round the hill. Our main set is just down there. You can see my blue backpack by the hole. Got a burn running down just next to that, and then we are on the slopes of the mountains in the glen. So because these sets that I've been surveying today, the ones here and the other ones up near the Loch Elsh Dam, are sets that are currently in use, I'm only been surveying kind of one hole per set to try and minimise the disturbance I'm causing, especially since some of these have got cubs in. We really want to leave as little impact as possible to protect and make sure our badgers are safe and grow up healthy and strong. So again, in this Glenelg set, we've got about 9 holes, we reckon, with the main one being the one I was sampling. But something we're seeing really clearly here is the kind of platforms in the hill. It's kind of got the platform where it kind of drops, then you've got another platform where they've been digging out another hole and chucking out the spoil, then it goes back down the hill. So that's something really cool to see. So what I was mentioning earlier about how they've changed this, landscape. Here we've got our natural slope of the hill, but if we turn and look up here, it is really evident those platforms coming out of the profile of the hill. Oh, so here we've got Badger Trail swooping up. Oh, you can see this one on camera good. Up round the hill towards that main hole. Really quite neat. Here we've got all this disturbed ground here in all this kind of loose moss. That's badgers foraging for their worms and stuff as well. So the badgers we've got in Glenelg seem to be doing a bit better in terms of food than the ones that were in the other glen we were visiting earlier today. Their poo has no signs of kind of additional protein, as it were, in the form of those small mammals. So they seem to be doing really well with their earthworms and not needing to search as much for alternate food sources, which is always nice to see that they're doing so well. Especially this is a very green area here, kind of flat bottomed glen with quite steep sides, so very moist area where a lot of water is collecting, which will help them quite a bit. We've got more tracks, so we've got this one coming in here along here. This isn't badger, this belongs to a much heavier animal. You can tell because of all the churning up here in the ground, whereas we see here Badger Trail swooping off and then heading straight up towards where our set was.
2 feet imposed on top of one another.
Perfect little badger prints.
So front and back paw.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Nice. So we've been following this really well developed badger trail up from Balmacara Square, so now on the Balmacara estate looking for our last live set, and it's been the longest and clearest trail we've had all week. Been foraging off the side as well, but now we know we're getting close because we found 2 periphery holes, one right where I'm standing here and one further down the hill, and you can see a really clear spoil heap over that, so getting warmer. We're at our first hole in Balmaclara. You can see right where they've dragged bedding, right through and down. Got what it looks like some little dung pits as well in there, so I'm gonna get down and get my measurements. So,
Disused ones.
8 holes that seem to be used going up this path. As my dad just said, a couple of disused ones. For context, this path is going up a hill along a burn. What's interesting about this hole is the fact that if you're looking at the spoil heap, this isn't really a platform coming out the hole. This is out the hole and then a hill, or through a hill up to a plateau and back down again. So they probably means they maybe have kicked out a lot more material recently, or well, relatively recently, and expanded. But this hole is really recessed back down under that lump. So this hole is set out virtually identically to the one just behind it as well. Like I said, part of this series, carrying up this burn, you can maybe vaguely see the badger track there. And again, here's hole number 3, 2, 1, going up the hill, and then more up through there. This is another of our holes, because this one's not on an angle. We can see straight into there, see how it really opens up. So I could probably do measurements from a lot of these holes because they all are in use. However, out of respect for the mother and their cubs down there, I've chosen to only take measurements from one, kind of the main hole that seems to have the most use, and also the one that seems to be the most representative. So I've checked the holes up and down this hill, and the one I showed you first, hole number 1, is the hole that I'm taking those measurements from. We've got the most activity there, largest spoil heap, and all the rest, and the most latrines outside, so it does seem to be the main entrance for these badgers. Hi guys, I have now finished with the badgers part of my project, so I'm moving on to step 2, which is the wind farm. So I'm currently standing in front of what is the proposed site for the Breckish wind farm. So I'm going to be taking you guys around this site, around the edges of it, and telling you about the challenges that this will cause for the local ecosystem, and potential mitigation and things that need to be considered when building sites such as this. So the first thing I want to talk to you guys about is hydrology, so especially the movement of water underground. So the region that they're planning to build the Breckish wind farm is on the other side of this road, but it leads down across the road under to over here, and this is one of the lochs that make up the Black Lochs, which are a series of small lochs and lochans running up and down both sides of this road. So they're called the Black Lochs because of all the peat content in the water, and this is a really important area for drainage and for flow of water in this kind of region between kind of the high points of the island. And so when you have to put a wind turbine in place, you have to have a huge concrete support because you don't want your wind farm to turn into the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So these concrete blocks are really going to disrupt the flow of this water through this region, and that's going to cause absolute havoc for all the lochs and the burns, and also just the water retention of the area in general. So you might see flooding, increased runoff, and that's going to cause a lot of problems for people in the local area. So the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is something called infrasound, and that is kind of this low level sound that is produced by the production of electricity and by these wind turbines. So it is written into law that all wind farms must be at least 2 kilometres away from any human settlement due to the presence of infrasound, and so the Breckish wind farm is actually really towing that 2 kilometres away from the settlement of Breckish. But I'm wondering, if the infrasound is so damaging to humans, we must be 2 kilometres away from it, then what is this doing to the animals, and why is there no kind of legislation in place to protect them? So we have studies about infrasound looking at their effect on badgers and kind of the negative impacts it has on them and their cortisol levels, so their stress. So it's causing them very high stress. And we are kind of looking and seeing if there's a similar effect on otters, because they're both in the same family, they're both mustelids, they both react very, very similarly to certain stimuli. And we know we have otters in this region. So the bridge just behind me here, if you can see the concrete, it kind of curves up, and then there's a little ledge at top. That is for our otters to pass by. We have plenty of records of otters in this area coming through these burns and down to the locks. This is going to be a huge disturbance to these animals. It's also something worth noting how I was talking about hydrology. If you look in the wall of the bridge, you'll see this little white pipes for excess runoff. So we know that the brackish area is a high driver of water and is sending a lot of water down into this region, and all of that's going to be completely disrupted. So the next thing I want to talk to you guys about is peat. So what is peat? Peat is the slow kind of build up soil made from decaying plant matter. It takes years and years and years to form. It's something like each millimetre is 10 years of peat formation. But it is an absolutely incredible carbon sink, and for methane as well. It really traps and holds on to that gas and prevents it from leaking out into the atmosphere. And the peat you see behind me here, this is 100% peat soils. This is grade 1 undisturbed peat. Never been touched since it's been forming, so this is an absolutely incredible habitat for all sorts of things. But also where the brackish wind farm is going to be, that is also up to 75% and 100% peat. And that is what is going to have to be removed in order for these huge concrete platforms for these wind farms to be put in. And the current plan is to dump the peat here, and that's going to be incredibly disruptive. One, it's going to completely smother everything here, all this vegetation, all these insects, all these small mammals. It's just going to completely crush those. In addition, so disturbing this peat is going to release huge amounts of CO2 and methane, which is obviously not very good. You know, this wind farm is being created to kind of reduce the impact of CO2 from fossil fuels, but by creating this wind farm, they're actually generating a huge amount of CO2. But also this is going to disturb all the sediment. So when this sediment is going to be dumped over here, it's going to be loose, it's not going to be packed and controlled, and so that sediment is again going to be leaking CO2 and methane, but also the sediment itself is going to be extremely susceptible to being washed away and run off and deposited in lakes and the locks and the burns, and really clogging up those areas and making it really hard for fish and other species to live there. And because they're the bottom of the food chain, they're just going to absolutely destroy kind of the upper levels of it as well. So this is a really serious problem for this region. So we're about to start hiking up into the moor to kind of get a closer look at the area itself where this wind farm is being put on, and we're going to take you guys with us. So we are in a very typical moorland habit right now. This is what we were seeing a few days ago and yesterday with our badger bedding. It's common purple moorgrass, and we have as well common ling here. So very typical for this environment, very similar to yesterday. So much of this section is filled with these hills and then these really steep ravines. So I'm just really wondering how they're thinking of installing these huge wind farms. I mean, the wind turbines that they're using are absolutely massive. They are 5.7 times the height of the Kyle Bridge, so they are super turbines, and because of that, that means they're going to need to also put in super pylons to transport the energy out, because for this wind farm the electricity isn't being used here. This is being taken out down to England for our power, which I think is just really unfair, to be honest, that it's going to be causing all this harm and this detriment to this local community, but they're really not going to be seeing the benefit of it. And then these super pylons are going to be causing so many other issues down the line as well. They've not even fully planned where they want to put them. So it's just a bit of a logistical nightmare on top of everything else as being unfair to the community. Now, something I am really noticing here is that sound carries. So we have hiked quite a way out from the road, really quite a distance in here. And yet, you know, in the background of some of my videos, you've probably still been hearing cars going past. We can hear the river right from the bottom of the ravine. So sound carries, the wind really carries in this environment. So that's not good for when you have a really great noisy wind farm here. Here we are, the top of one of these hills in the moor. And look at that, all that waterlogged ground. And that is all draining down to the Black Locks and is going to be disrupted by this wind farm. So I mentioned in a video earlier kind of the height of some of these wind farms, but I don't think I've really emphasised the scale of the farm as a whole. So this wind farm is proposed to be made up of around 20 of these turbines, and they are going to be stretching across an absolutely huge area. I'm talking, you know, many kilometres square. So from right back there past all over those hills to, if I swivel around to the tree line, you might be able to see back behind me over there at Kinloch, and then they're going to be stretching from the road all the way over here, right back here past those hills, down further than you can see, to kind of where the base of that hill, that huge mountain behind me is. This is going to be absolutely massive. So here I am again on the top of a different hill this time, and I quickly want to talk about the valuable breeding ground that this area is. So this kind of wet marsh is the perfect environment for so many ground nesting birds. So curlews are a famous example, but something that is really special to this location is the red-throated diver. So they've been breeding here recently. They're still using this breeding ground, and it's an incredibly precious habitat that you don't find in a lot of other places for these birds. And so the wind farm is going right on top of reported nest sites, and that is just really bad news for those poor birds. You don't find this type of habitat a lot of places. Like I said, this is really special. So something that I've not touched on yet about this area and why it's important is the migratory birds. So this area is really important. It's pretty much a highway for all sorts of migratory bird species, right down from your small songbirds up to your birds of prey and your swans and your geese. And the reason is because this is a perfect kind of almost scooped out valley for them to fly right through. So it starts over here, Broadford Bay. If I lift you up, you just might be able to see a house or two. But Broadford Bay really comes down from a really broad, sweeping semicircle into this kind of scooped out valley, and then we follow and go round to here. And this is the other side. This is out near Kinloch. And you can really see the bowl shape in the mountains there and how that really funnels things through from the sound up to here. So you might be asking, why is this such a big deal, these migratory birds coming near these wind farms? Can't they see them coming? And there's been some really good papers recently, a 2022 paper talking about creating some kind of object that will divert birds and scare them away from wind farms and telephone lines. They were looking at this kind of checkerboard that span. It was tested on Canada geese using kind of their visual range, because geese are really famous for going crash straight into things. So there's some wonderful work there and some really good potential to work on other wind farms and other, telephone lines and things like that. However, the problem is that a lot of the migratory birds that are coming through here are coming through at night, and so they're not going to be seeing anything. Another big problem we have is all the birds of prey coming through here. So you'd think that birds of prey, they have really, really good vision, right? Because, you know, they're hunting, they're diving, but they have really, really good vision in the wrong plane. So the way that these birds of prey are kind of built and like the way they look is they are looking down. That is where their really, really good field of vision is. They are not seeing straight ahead. And so we have incredibly high collision ratings of, a lot of studies been done on vultures, ball swan eagles, which are quite common here, golden eagles. And we've recently had really, really rare white-tailed eagles moving into this area. And that is just going to be such a hazard for them in the dark as well. So the last kind of animal or group of animals I want to talk about being affected is bats. I absolutely love bats. I'm batty for them, and if you aren't, you really should be. They're absolutely incredible animals. But there have been a lot of studies in Canada about the interaction between bats and wind turbines, and it is found that there are huge mortality rates for bats when wind farms are concerned. And it's not collision. You know, there are some collisions with bats and wind turbines, except, you know, especially in the dark, bats can echolocate. They know they're there. However, the real danger for bats is the pressure. So these areas of really, really low pressure following the turbine blade are what is fatal for most bats. And because in the least graphic way possible, these low pressures liquidize the bat brain, and that is just, you know, absolutely horrible, and these animals will never survive that. And this is a really, really good environment for bats, this open kind of with lots of midges, especially these flying insects. This is perfect territory for them. Bats are protected animals. They are really, really wonderful additions to any landscape. And it's just really disheartening as well to see that there's not a lot of press about this. Not many people know about the effects they have on bats, which is something that I really want to change. You know, they're such incredible little animals, and they deserve kind of the attention that birds and other species are getting in matters such as this. So I do have to admit, the way I've been talking about the wind farms in this section really makes it seem like I'm against them, and I am not in any way whatsoever. Wind farms are an absolutely incredible kind of piece of technology. They're really, really an invaluable way of producing electricity that is not then producing CO2 as a byproduct. They're a really, really good, clean source of energy. The issue I have with them is the places they're put. So every kind of problem that is generated from this wind farm, everything that I've been talking about, is all location. It is all about the way that this is going to impact the local ecosystem and the disturbance it's going to cause. And all of these things that I've been talking about are really going to be changed by choosing better locations and smaller sites. And that is really what I want to emphasize here. It is not the wind farm, it's the location. So I've just finished meeting with James Merriweather, very accomplished biologist and also a campaigner against the current state of the Scottish farmed salmon, especially the ones here on Skye. And he has been so kind as to give me some recommendations of books, this one by Norwegian authors, as well as his own work, Holes, which I have here, and then telling me about some of the campaigns that he's been in and some of the things that they've been doing to give me inspiration of what I can write and what I can do to raise further awareness to this issue. So I'm here at Loch Einort to talk to you about fish farms. Now if you look behind me, you should just be able to see the outline of one there. So what are fish farms? Fish farms are where, as the name suggests, we farm and produce fish rather than having to go and fish the wild stocks for it. And so because of this, it's heralded as this kind of great sustainable option. It's saving our wild fish populations and all that. But net caged salmon and fish in general are the furthest thing from sustainable, and calling them such is misleading at best and a fabrication at worst, and this is why. So the first thing I want to talk about are the holes in the argument, and I mean like the quite literal holes in these nets. Why are they such a bad thing? Well, first of all, they are releasing absolutely everything that is in those nets. So the first thing is sewage. Fish do what fish do. It's a fact of life, but what is bad is that all of this sewage is being released directly into the lochs. So salmon fish farms produce more sewage annually than the entire population of Scotland. And that is not controlled, that is not, stopped in any way. It is all released straight into the ocean. This would never be allowed in any other industry. So why is it okay here? Secondly, the pesticides that they use to treat the fish straight out into the water, and we don't know what form these chemicals take when they break down and interact with water and other things in the environment. We are just releasing total chemical unknowns into our lochs, and they're expecting us to be okay with it, and I, for one, am really not. Another thing is the food. So the food as well, they will feed excess food in the hope that, all will get some, but that just trickles out right to the bottom along with everything else, and it falls to the loch floor along with this sewage, along with these pesticides, and it smothers it. It kills absolutely everything on these loch floors. As put by James Merriweather in his book Holes, extinction means kill, not just slightly inconvenienced, but that's what they want you to think. Levels of dangerous chemicals in the waters where these lochs are annually and regularly are above the recommended guidelines. In any other industry, they would be strictly held to these regulations, but not this one. The lochs we have here on Skye are some of the best examples of nearshore environments in the entire country, and they are not being given the protection that they are due and they are owed. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is sea lice. So what are sea lice? Well, they're a parasite, right? They're a louse parasite that latches on and feeds on fish, and I mean the fish flesh. They will strip fish down to the bone, eating them alive. And fish lice in other areas where we don't see fish farms aren't a threat at all. Their levels are ridiculously low. In some areas they're not present at all, even when wild salmon are. But in fish farms, because you have so many fish in such close quarters, these lice spread like crazy. They infect entire farms, eating them to the bone alive. This would not be allowed in any other form of animal husbandry. Why is it allowed here? These fish are suffering immensely until they die. They're passing these lice on out through these holes into wild populations that are migrating past. They're infecting everything in this loch. And another point with these lice is the pesticides that we are giving these fish to try and, to stop them being more susceptible to lice. All it's doing is creating pesticide resilient strains. The same issue we're having with antibiotics and bacteria and viruses. We're having the exact same problem with sea lice. We're creating super strains that cannot be killed by absolutely anything, and that is a real problem. And this point about lice leads me on to my next point of welfare and mortality. So on average, fish farms have at least 25% mortality rates. So imagine you walk into a field and 1 in 4 cows is dead. That is what we're seeing here, and that is just ridiculous. Again, this would not be allowed in any other form of animal husbandry. Some farms in the lowlands are reporting mortality levels of up to 87%. 87%. It's just absolutely crazy, all these problems that are being caused by cramped conditions, the excess release of, salmon waste, which is causing eutrophication. It's choking out not only the salmon themselves, but their environment. All these problems are going to get continually worse as sea level temperature rises, as sea temperature goes up. And this is what we're already seeing in the lowlands. We're seeing increased sea temperatures and increased mortality rates. Because as sea temperature goes up, the oxygen availability, that is the amount of oxygen that can be dissolved in the water column, decreases. And again, it's choking these fish out. It's making all these other problems much, much worse. And right now you might be asking, well, what about the wild fish? We've been talking about all these effects on these farmed animals, but what about the wild ones? And the simple answer is, there are no wild ones. Wild salmon are now nearly extinct, and it's because of these guys. So a lot of fish farms are placed at the openings of salmon rivers or are placed on salmon migratory paths. Because you know it's where the salmon want to be, it's their natural environment, so of course you place your farm there, right? But then that means that these wild salmon are caught in the crossfire of everything wrong with these farms. Sea lice, diseases, all are jumping ship out of those holes onto our wild salmon populations and utterly destroying them. In addition, when you do get escapees from the net farms, because of course that happens, you know, storms, damage, all the rest of it, some slip out and they join the migratory wild salmon and they breed with them. And that reduces the wild salmon's genetic fitness and makes it much, much harder to survive in the wild. Because these farmed fish, they have been selectively bred. Okay, they've been bred to be bigger, slower, they've been bred for their meat. But that's not what helps the wild salmon. And so when these two gene pools mix, it damages the wild salmon even further. Now, the question that I'm thinking right now is, why salmon? Like, objectively, they are such a terrible fish to farm because they're a migratory predator. And yet they're stuck in those cages, 10 by 12 metres, swimming round and round in circles. That produces terrible fish quality of like the meat when you compare it to the wild caught equivalent. And also, like I said, salmons are predators. They need to be fed other fish, so we are actively draining our fish stocks to try and provide food for them. It takes as many as 3 to 5 kilos to produce 1 kilo of salmon. And that's just terrible because, you know, the big proponent for fish farms is that it's farmed fish so it won't damage our wild stocks. But we have to damage our wild stocks to provide for the farms. So one of the things we can do is farm another fish. For example, tilapia. Tilapia is a West African fish and it has been met with a lot of success in farming experiments. In addition, the main thing about tilapia, which makes it a great alternative, it's omnivorous, right? So it can be fed exclusively vegetarian and it won't suffer for it. It'll actually do really, really well. So we can remove the pressure on our wild fish stocks because we can farm tilapia, which are vegetarian. So one way that fish farms try and advertise themselves to locals is they say that they're going to provide jobs, they're going to provide steady and stable employment to the local community. But fish farms can actually really negatively impact local people for 3 main reasons. One of them is automation, so a lot of jobs on fish farms are being replaced by AI and automated systems. The second is the visual pollution these cause, so not a lot of people like the look of fish farms. And especially on Skye, tourism is one of its biggest industries, but guest houses and similar are being negatively impacted because visitors aren't wanting to be where these fish farms are. And the third, and maybe like the biggest one, is the impact it's having on the local creel fishermen. So in winter, fishermen fish in these locks. They also fish the seabed for the prawns and the things on the lock floor. But this is all being smothered by the waste from these fish farms. This is actively destroying a traditional style of fishing, and that's not on. So what do? We don't want to continue overfishing our wild fish stocks, but the current net system fish farms are actively destroying our environment. So what do? The answer is you move them on land. Closed containment systems, so tanks on land, in warehouses, things like that, are the way forward because they eliminate virtually every problem we associate with the traditional style of fish farming. No holes, no pollution, no sewage, no eutrophication, rising sea levels don't matter, you're not interfering with local ecosystems, there's no risk of interbreeding with wild fish stocks. Everything is solved by just putting your fish in a tank. And we've actually seen really high success rates of this. So the Canadian and US scientists have been farming trout, tilapia and salmon since at least 2016 in this method, using the aquaponics method that even actually able to transform the fish waste into something useful. So by having a successive series of tanks, they're able to filter out the fish waste and use it as nutrients for successive tanks of organisms. So you're also producing oyster, urchin, and prawn, and then you get clean water out the other end that you can cycle back into your original fish tanks. So now you've heard it. You've heard the damage that salmon fish farms do on local environments, and you've heard how we can fix virtually every problem associated with this industry by using aquaponics and moving on land in tanks. But now what can you do? Well, it's quite simple really. You can research, right? You can look for further information. So I recommend Scottish Salmon Think Tank. They have a wonderful YouTube channel filled with all sorts and links to other areas. Also Holes by James Merriweather, and a book I'm currently reading is New Fish by a couple of Norwegian authors, one of them Austin, about the history of the Norwegian industry. And then you can also tell other people, you know, spread the word. When planning applications come up, send in your informed comments. Tell them exactly why you do not want these fish farms in our lochs, in our lakes and in our seas and rivers. And, you know, support charities, support Scottish Salmon Think Tank, communities, Coastal Communities Network Scotland, Wild Fish, Off the Table, all these brilliant initiatives by people who are desperately trying to fight for our ecosystems and our environment and our future. And hey, maybe consider making a switch. Maybe eat wild salmon, other sources of fishy protein, and leave the farmed fish right where they find them. So back here, past the bridge, we have the Marine Harvest site, which is creating the fish pellets that they use as food. So that's where all, you know, our white bait and our other small fish get brought in to be ground down and turned into pellets for food for the salmon farms. Hi everyone, I've just got back from Skye, and today I'm going to be starting on my first piece of my post-fieldwork analysis. And that's going to be looking through the badger poo to see if I can see what small mammals they were eating. So I've got my samples, I've got my gloves, my forceps, my mounted needles, my trays and my pots. So I'm about to get going with that. Okay, that took forever. I did take a video of me doing some, but I had to cut it off because I knew I was just going to be here for ages. But here they are, my little pots of organic and bone matter. So now I've got to estimate the percentage of each component and then do it all again, this time for an even larger sample. Wish me luck. It's done. Both my badger set poo samples have been taken apart and I've been looking at the bones. And what's something really interesting here that I'm seeing is I'm not finding any diagnostic bones. I'm not finding any skulls or jaws, which are really going to be able to tell me, you know, what small mammals they're eating. But we can guess that set 10, because of the larger size of the bones, and also because of the environment we found them in, they're probably voles. So when I was in Glen Uladane, I also found an owl pellet on a rock nearby to set 6. So I am going to be taking this apart and hopefully I will, you know, find some diagnostic material in here so I can at least figure out what my set 6 badgers were eating. I've got a much higher chance of finding diagnostic material in this owl pellet because owls swallow prey whole and then they'll regurgitate all the bones and fur and all the bits they can't fully digest. So we're going to have a much higher chance of finding that material in this. I was right, we've got diagnostic material. I have a whole skull, upper and lower jaws with teeth of what we currently think is field vole. Here they are in all their glory. That's the lower jaw and this is the upper jaw. These are my teeth and that's a foot. So my dad has once more proved he's Dad of the Year because he's brought me back a box of goodies for me to be able to start doing some of my soil analysis. So I've got universal indicator, distilled water, filter paper, funnels, test tubes, balances, all sorts, so I can get started on doing that tomorrow. So I'm going to show you how I am doing the pH analysis of my soil samples. So first thing to do is pop a couple of spatulas worth of dirt into my test tubes. Another couple more for good luck. Because I still want to leave enough of this to be able to do a colour analysis and also to leave some for an organic content test as well. So to this, I'm going to add some distilled water. Very nice. Give this a bit of a mash, a bit of a shake. Looks a bit disgusting, that. In here I have a funnel with some filter paper, so that goes on, and then in goes that. So we can filter out any particulates. And now we just wait. I'm just going to let this drip through, and when it's gone through I'm going to put some universal indicator solution in, and then that will tell me what pH my soil is. So this is universal indicator solution. It is an irritant and it does stain while I'm wearing a lab coat, so I don't have a lot of water, so I'm just going to be very, very careful. Put a drop of this in. Oh, there we go. Wonderful. Here we go. You can see this kind of yellowish colour. So this is acidic. This is an acidic soil. So I'm going to pull up a universal indicator chart so I can get an exact number for it. And then I'm going to repeat this for every single soil sample that I have. So here we go. So all my soil samples have been weighed of their pre-water loss weight, and I've got them all set out here on these trays. So after this we're going to leave them for the water to evaporate off. We're going to re-weigh them, then we're going to burn them to get rid of the organic content, and then re-weigh them so we can see the percentage of organic content that there was in these soils originally. These are the samples from the old sets that are no longer in use. And then down here we have the samples from the sets that are currently in use. So I've just finished doing all my post-field work analysis and, reading through it and making sense of the data. So I'm just going to share that with you guys. So the owl pellet that I found near set 6 definitely did have field wall remains in it, which is really interesting that this is the only thing I have that's diagnostic material. So I am assuming, because the proximity to the set and the similarities in environment, that the other bones that I found in Badger Poo were field wall, but still, like, that being the only diagnostic thing is quite special. So I did some extra reading and I found a 1983 paper that found when analysing small mammal bone assemblages in the faeces of Canidae and Mustelidae and others, skulls were really underrepresented. But they found that there was a slight to moderate corrosion of bones from badger poo, and as the head is quite bone dense, I think that they might be avoiding that head because it's hard to digest and then it holds little to no nutritional value. So set 6 in total kind of had a ratio of 1:1 for bone and organic matter, but set 10 had a ratio of 1:3 for bone to organic matter, and the bones in 10 were larger and more complete on average as well. Set 9 was the only other set that I had with visible faeces, but it was fresh, so I was not picking that up. And it didn't either have any visible bones, so it wouldn't have been useful for what I was doing. But we did find kind of scattered bones not in faeces, further away from the set. So the bone content of 10 is kind of between 6 and 9, which matches the habitat difference, because 6 is open moorland, 9 is woodland, and 10 is a mix. It's a more open woodland on the edge of moorland. So I kind of infer that the badgers of set 10 must supplement their diet with small mammals, but it's not as needed as much as in set 6 due to the richer food patches in their territories. So in addition, I found that the bones are really only found in faeces further away from the set entrance, and I know that all these sets, so 6, 9 and 10, had cub presence because of the plentiful bedding, the dung pits, the spoil heaps, all the rest of it. And the dung pits next to the entrances, which just SOWAs would use, the female badgers, are free of bones. So to me, this implies it is the boar or the male badgers that are eating the small mammals, as they can forage further afield because they're not restricted by caring for the cubs. So these are my pH results. I found that Kinloch had a pH of 3, Isle of Skye, Toravaig and Glen Uladane had pHs of 4, and Glenelg and Balmacara had pHs of 5. So the soils were mainly brown with some reddish undertones, with paler and sandier sediments from Glen Uladane. So disused sets have quite visually and texturally different soils from their used counterparts. So the disused set soils felt a lot wetter and had dark brown colours and undertones. And I found that was actually reflected in their water and organic and mineral components. So I originally thought that pH might be due to decomposition, as the sets that have been abandoned for longer have got lower pHs, because organic matter can get incorporated into soils and then affect soil pH. However, the pH of the Glen Uladane sets is the exact same as Toravaig, when Toravaig is abandoned and Glen Uladane definitely isn't. So, and the longest abandoned set, which was set 5 in Isle of Skye, has the same pH as these two locations as well. So these three locations have quite similar underlying soil types. So I think that here soil pH is more likely due to be underlying soil composition, basically. And additional research that I did, I found that in many cases, soil pH is influenced by the acid and base forming ions in the soil. In conclusion, the sets I surveyed were all found in relatively fertile brown forest soils, and they all had acidic pHs. So the forest soils were found to be wetter with higher organic contents, and the open environment sets were found to have higher mineral contents. Overall, the used sets had lower water and higher mineral contents. The population of badgers on the mainland in this area of Scotland appeared to be doing very well. So each main set was very well established, shown by the spoil heaps and the surrounding paths, and they all had cubs as well, which is a really encouraging sign. So the differences between kind of this environment and the more traditional thought of badger environment doesn't seem to be restraining these badgers in any capacity, really. Based on the similarities between the well-established sets currently being used on the mainland and the unused sets on Skye, I think that reintroduction is possible based on set condition and surrounding environment. So despite the age of these used sets, the majority are pretty stable and in remarkable condition, with entrances clearly distinguishable and tunnels retaining depth and orientation underground. The more isolated nature of many of these Skye sets kind of increases their suitability to be used to help that new population establish themselves safely on the island and hopefully restore this animal to its historic distribution. I've just got back home for the summer, so we're about to head up to Skye in a week to finish off my project, and I've just come home to my leaflets, which I've been designing over the past week and a bit, and I sent them in to be printed, and here they are. So one for wind farms, one for badgers, and last but not least, one for salmon. So I can't wait to take these up to Skye and distribute them at the tourist information points and the community centres. So I think this is going to be great. I can't wait. So here they are. This is the wind farm one. This is the inside. Then this is how it folds. The inside of my badges. And once more, how it folds. And then again, last but not least, how it folds. It's now time for me to head up back to Skye so I can distribute my leaflets and tie my project together.
Don't tell me I'm dead when my heart is beating strong. Though I'm down upon my knees, I will rise in song. I'm the voice of generations still to see the dawning day. Who will be heard on the mountains and the bay. Hold, hold, and live for the gold. We still can save our soul. Hold, hold, and live for the gold and the anchors of our soul. I was born to the bloodline and the land of the gale, and I won't lie down and watch the end of our tale. We can't rewrite the past, but our future can be made, and the road to change our story can be laid. Hold, hold, and live for the gold. We still can save our soul. Hold, hold, and live for the gold and the anchors of our soul. In a day we stand out to lose, adore to live. We have one last chance before the lifelines give. Use the history and the hope of our people and our light to wake up now and see the morning light. Hold, hold, and live for the gold. We still can save our soul. Hold, hold, and live for the gold and the anchors of our soul. We will walk to the future with the power of our past, and the wounds long held will be healed at last, and the rise of the gale in our time will come from the old through the passion of the young. Hold, hold,
I'm just about to set off to deliver the first round of my leaflets to a community cafe and then hopefully a community recycling place. So, yay! So, this is the waste knot, a local kind of charity recycling place. And just in here, we've got my leaflets ready to be picked up. Next set of my leaflets are going here, which is the co-op at Broadford. So the next place I'm going to put my leaflets is Crew, which is the community centre just between Isle of Skye and Armadale, just off the main road. So, yay. Here she is. Ignore the driving Scottish rain. But in here, there's a post office, shop and deli, cafe, and a fish and chip shop. So there'll be a community place for me to stick my leaflets here. So now I'm just about to drop my leaflets, the last set of them, off at the local trust shop. So that is the last of my leaflets delivered. That is my impact. So technically, that could be the end of my SOWA award. However, I want to take it a bit further. I have a meeting next week on Zoom with Faye McLeod, who's a local architect and involved in some way with the Brickish wind farm. So I'm going to be talking to her and figuring out how possible it would be to put on a series of talks at the University of Birmingham. So I have just had my last Zoom meeting with Faye McLeod. So what we've been doing is working on creating a presentation and kind of workshop that I can deliver at the University of Birmingham to environmental science and planning students, kind of give them a bigger awareness about the different forms of, wind farm management and the different operational scales and the benefits of community management and, things like that, and the impact that these community managed wind farms have both on the communities that they support, but also the lesser impact on the environment. So I'm going to be delivering those talks in September. I mean, I've chosen to do this because the other aspects that I've been looking at, chiefly the fish farms and the badgers, they have some really, really large charities supporting them and spreading their influence nationwide. But this, so far with the wind farms, is a problem that's been quite isolated to Skye. So I wanted to really use this platform that I'm creating to kind of take this message out there and make it more widespread. So there definitely is, I think, perspective for me to create some more talks going forward. But this is where I will be finishing my award, my SOWA award, which is a really big thing to say. And I'm really, really thankful for, everyone that's got involved and helped me do what I've wanted to do with this and even more. So, I really want to thank not only Faye McLeod and James Merriweather, but also my dad, Roger and Pat Cottis, and Rebecca Worthington for being the best mentor ever and, allowing me to do this incredible thing. And also, I've created quite a lot more content throughout the course of this SOWA award, over 140 hours at this point. So I have another video called Extras and the Cottis Files, basically showing what I got up to behind the scenes, and then a bit more detail of my data collection as well. So it'd mean a lot if you check those out, but hopefully you learned something from my SOWA award, and that's what I wanted to do, to show people about the brilliance that is Skye. So I hope you walk away for a wider appreciation of our beautiful landscape and maybe what you can do to help it. So thank you very much for watching.